Why is it important for Europe, for the European audience? These programs should not read as an internal Russian performance, but as an information attack. The main goal is to convince Western societies that Ukraine is already ready for surrender. The USA and Russia can exchange the war without Europe. Europe is not a subject of negotiations. If these narratives are fixed in Western media and politics, they will weaken the support of Kyiv, create the ground for pressure on Ukraine to accept reality and actually legitimize aggression. By the end of the broadcast, a single picture is built. Trump and Putin, two leaders who can stop the war, Zelensky, weak, illegitimate, and prepared for concessions. Europe is noisy but powerless. Thus, Russian TV inspires negotiations without Ukraine and Europe are the only real way. Hello, dear friends and comrades. Your favorite program is live, 60 minutes hot on the heels. We begin with important political news. Donald Trump called Russian President Putin. The conversation took place at 1 a.m. and lasted 40 minutes. The White House publishes a photo from the Oval Office. Secretary of State Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance also took part in the conversation. Trump interrupted negotiations with European leaders and Zelensky for this conversation. Following the telephone conversation, Trump said that he was starting preparations for a meeting between Putin and Zelensky, and then for a trilateral summit in his own area. Putin's aide, Ushakov, confirmed the fact of the call and called the conversation constructive. But here are the nuances. According to Ushakov, they are only talking about a possible increase in the level of delegations that are holding bilateral Russian-Ukrainian negotiations. And Ushakov did not say anything about a personal meeting between Putin and someone from Ukraine, at least publicly. Let's listen. The most important statement. The US president, in turn, informed about the negotiations with Volodymyr Zelensky and the leaders of several European countries that had just ended in the White House. During the subsequent telephone conversation, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump expressed their support for continuing direct negotiations between the delegations of Russia and Ukraine. In this regard, in particular, the idea was discussed that it would be necessary to study the possibility of raising the level of representatives of the Ukrainian and Russian sides, that is, those representatives who participate in the aforementioned direct negotiations. It is characteristic that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump agreed to continue to closely contact each other on the Ukrainian and other pressing issues of the international and bilateral agenda. I think President Putin wants to find a solution. Trump continues to talk about the Kremlin being ready for a peace deal, even after the official part of the program ended. Journalists filmed the US president in an informal conversation, explaining this to President Macron and Prime Minister Meloni. I think Putin wants to come to a deal for me. You can interpret this however you want. Maybe it's crazy. Right in the middle of a meeting with European leaders, Trump decides to call Putin. He interrupted the meeting to call Vladimir Putin right in the middle of it, right at the moment when all the heads of state were at the table. And now we are waiting to see if he stepped aside to talk or called Putin right there. Initially, we were told that he would call Putin after the meeting, but he made the call right in the middle of it. And I would not be surprised at all if he turned on speakerphone so that everyone at the table in the East Room could hear it. The White House releases a photo of the phone call. Trump calls the president of Russia from the Oval Office. Nearby are Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Rubio, and a translator. The Europeans were not invited. The Washington Post writes that during the joint photo, there were far fewer smiles than before.